Well, it's that time again. That time when we step into our favorite virtual bar for an actual real reason this time, because we'll be interviewing a virtual guest, as it were.
See what you did there.
Yeah. We'll be talking today about AI, whether it's the next greatest tool or the next greatest temptation. I'm joined today by Greg and Ken. I'm your host, Chris, and this is Three Pastors Walk Into a Bar. We're also joined today by our new production assistant here at Athol Baptist Church, Ethan Antone.
Okay, press the button for applause.
He doesn't know where it's at.
Oh, okay.
He's new. He's new.
The crowd goes wild.
He's new. He hasn't
He's on
learned
break
to,
already.
Yeah, he hasn't learned to do all those things fast yet. But that stuff comes with experience.
Which he will get some today.
So Genesis chapter number 3 and verse 6. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate, and she also gave some to her husband who was with her, dummy, and he ate. And then we all know the story from there.
Mm-hmm. That's why we are where we are today.
Mm-hmm. The pursuit of knowledge that we have not earned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a scary thought, philosophically speaking. But artificial intelligence, or AI, it's the latest big step forward in computer science. But is it a big step backward in mankind, displaying the imago Dei of God? Since computers were created by man, how is that a big step backwards? Explain.
Well, if you turn to your creation instead of the creator, you are the creator of the AI. But to gain more knowledge than you have, should you turn to your creation for that, or should you turn to the ultimate creator, the ultimate knowledge and wisdom?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could
augment yourself artificially.
I see where you're going with that, but I mean, couldn't you say that about textbooks as well?
Suppose you could, in kind of that same sense. I guess it depends on. Textbooks are a repository. They're a communication medium for the knowledge of mankind that he has.
Right.
AI promises knowledge that nobody yet holds.
That's what it's promising anyway.
Yeah.
It has yet to deliver any of that. It's still
starting to deliver. It's starting to show promise. That's the scary part.
Yeah, I mean, they're looking at it for the possibility of solving things like global hunger, climate change, if you believe in such a thing, weather forecasting. I mean, anyone can do better at weather forecasting than humans, really. I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, we're pretty low percentage when it comes to weather forecasting. We've been talking about that a lot here lately because we were coming back from Kalispell we went to a basketball tournament there, and we were looking at the weather, and Kim's like, well, it's going to be doing this, and it's going to be doing that, and I was like, they don't know.
No,
they don't have a clue.
Predict the future.
They don't know what the weather's.
I remember one time I went to the Farmer's Almanac to see what the weather was going to be for the next month, and they weren't better, but they were just as accurate as the current.
That's about
on
right.
their weather program.
That's about the size of it. Yeah. Yeah, it's like every winter, it never fails. You always get the people on Facebook or whatever, and they're always, like, well, this caterpillar's got this many stripes, so that means we're going to have a long winter, or, whatever. It's like, the animals are just guessing just like we are, guys. Yep. They don't know. They're just, they think, oh, well, maybe it's coming early. I don't know.
And they don't really care.
They don't really care, actually.
They've seen it all before.
Mm-hmm.
They're not worried.
Yeah, and most of those bugs, they're not going to live through it anyway. So they're like, well,
thank goodness.
This is the end, guys. It's been real.
Those stink bugs seem to do pretty well through the winter.
Yeah, you have to spray for those, man, or they just get out of control. You really do.
Ugly.
They're bonkers, man. They were not this year, but the year before that, I think it was, when they were really bad. I mean, we looked at the back of our house, which we have a 2-story house, and there's a big wall on the back that's only got one window on it. And the entire back of the house was just covered with stink bugs. I mean, just like, it was like, well, yeah, we might need to do something about this.
Sci-fi movie being in production or something.
It was a little crazy.
Yeah. It's nuts.
So we had a company come out and spray for them, and we haven't really had a problem with them anymore. We used to get them flying into our face at night while we're sleeping and dive bomb your mouth and stuff. It's like,
and then you grab them, and then you got the smell.
yeah, and then you got the smell all over your hand. Yes. Are they targeting you? Like, are they on the wall and they're looking at you and they're waiting for your mouth to open? They're like, "Go, boys, go, go!
It's time."
There's gonna be something good in there.
When you hear the, it's time.
Maybe AI can figure those out.
Yeah.
So it promises to give mankind the knowledge that it seeks, but has been out of its reach so far. And whether that's due to time or whether it's just due to just not being able to conceptually wrap our head around it, it'll be interesting to see how that works out. So simply put, artificial intelligence makes it possible for machines to learn from experience, adjust to new inputs, and perform human-like tasks. And it's human-like for sure. We're a long way from them actually being like sentient. I'll give you a perfect example. There was a guy who took a picture of some town in Colorado or something, and he put it through an AI, and he said, "Look, I want you to take this picture, and I want you to clean it up, and I wanted you to make it more appropriate for the area that it's in, but add some things to make it more interesting." And so the AI took it and re-rendered it and put it back out, and it changed the mountains in the background so that there was 2 mountains instead of 1, changed the color of the sky, and it put palm trees everywhere. So
it's lacking a little experience.
It's still having a hard time kind of understanding where all this stuff kind of fits in the world. But it's interesting how these technologies are going to be used. Like most of it you hear about today is either like in chess games or in AI driven cars, relying heavily on deep learning, natural language processing. Using technologies like this, computers can be trained to accomplish specific tasks by processing large amounts of data, recognizing patterns and things of that nature. Siri, Alexa, Cortana, Google Assistant are all examples of really kind of rudimentary basic AIs. And they're sketchy at times.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, "Hey, Siri, navigate to," and then she's like, "What?
Why do you want to go there?
How dare you?" But not everybody is excited about AI. Movies, TV shows, and sci-fi novels have all warned us of the possible threats to privacy, freedom, or even our very existence. If you think about movies like Terminator, Skynet, things like that, or like the one that you like to talk about all the time, Greg. What was the name
Colossus.
of that? Colossus, right.
The Forbin Project.
Yeah. And then there was another one that came out, War Games. That was in the 80s, right? And it was kind of the same principle.
Mm-hmm.
Like this computer started playing these war game simulations between the United States and Russia, and it escalated, and everybody was on edge.
And Surrogates. Have you seen Surrogates? It's a weird one. Bruce
I
Willis.
saw it a while back. I couldn't recommend it, but I did see it. It was it had some content in it that I couldn't.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to recommend, but it was an interesting concept.
Yeah, it didn't make sense, but it was interesting.
Well, it kind of did, though, because you do have people kind of living in these virtual worlds now, where they barely come up to really communicate with real people.
Get into real life.
Yeah. And what I thought was really interesting about that movie at the end, this is a spoiler, so if you are intending to watch it, you might want to fast forward. But at the end of the movie, when he's standing in the street and the AI kind of network goes down, he's the only person standing in the street.
Yeah. Everybody
else was a surrogate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, was an AI. And they weren't really artificial intelligence. They were more like avatars being driven by people that were in these lounge chairs at home. But
and they were all ugly.
Yeah, there was so many gross things in that. Like this guy went out and he tried to hook up with this really pretty girl, and then they showed the pretty girl's person in their house driving this surrogate, and it was this big fat dude in his underwear in this lounge chair.
Yep.
It was like, what? Wow, that's disturbing.
I think the craziest AI movie that I can remember, will take you way back, is 2001 Space Odyssey.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I was going to mention that.
How
one
spooky
too.
they made it with so little technology, just that red light staring at you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then
good.
its voice was always just so calm.
Yeah,
it was like it's off-putting. That's for sure. So they've been warning us for a long time about super intelligent AIs going rogue and escaping our control, and scientists, politicians, and other celebrities have released public statements and policies calling for restraint and safeguards around the development of this technology. Elon Musk has been a guy who's been talking a lot about AI. I've seen a lot of the things that he has talked about as far as, what we should be thinking about as far as what AI looks like. We have a little clip here that we're going to play for you that is him at Tucker Carlson's show, and they're having this conversation about AI. So here's that clip.
Can you just roughly explain what you think the dangers might be?
Yeah, so the danger, really, AI is perhaps more dangerous than, say, mismanaged aircraft design or production maintenance or bad car production, in the sense that it has the potential, however small one may regard that probability, but it is non-trivial. It has the potential of civilizational destruction. There's movies like Terminator, but it wouldn't quite happen like Terminator because the intelligence would be in the data centers.
Right.
The robot's just the end effector.
Yeah, so he is really kind of trying to warn people that it is an inevitability that humans will, and in fact, I just heard him talking about this on another show or in an interview where he was talking about how it's not going to be the artificial intelligence that you're really going to have to worry about. It's going to be humans using artificial intelligence against one another.
Yeah.
That is going to be the problem. And he says if it gets utilized to create weapons, which it will get utilized to create weapons, then that's when we're really going to start running into problems.
Yeah.
I think it was I was cruising on Facebook or YouTube or something, and it was two AI robots and some sort of space age car, and some guy, I think he had a cowboy hat on, walks up and hands a automatic rifle to one of the robots.
Oh, I've seen that one.
Have you seen that one? And it turns and just riddles this car with bullets, and then the guy comes over. I think he takes the gun away, right?
Yeah, eventually. I think he was trying to demonstrate that the robot could distinguish between humans and non-humans.
That he didn't
and just
shoot the
goes
human right
ballistic
next
on the
to him.
non-humans.
I know which ones you guys are talking about. Those have been proven to be fake.
Yeah, I think so.
But they don't look real.
But they're pretty interesting in that.
CGI
Well,
is
it's
good.
not going to be long before that will be reality.
Well, here's the thing, right? Science fiction always becomes science fact. Almost 100% of the time. So anything that you see in science fiction today, in 50 years, it will be actual fact. I mean, look at Star Trek. I mean, we haven't gone as far as to have replicators or anything, but most of the science that is utilized in Star Trek to explain warp drives and plasma, creating plasma and using it to generate power and, all of those things, the colliding of matter and antimatter and all that is actually scientific fact. Practically speaking, it's not possible because the amount of power that you need, but it's actually there. And it seems like we always drift into this kind of where we take what we have seen and it inspires us to create truth from what we have seen. I mean, look at Dick Tracy, for instance.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody looked at Dick Tracy and thought, like, wow, look at him. He has a phone on his
TV.
watch.
TV.
That's amazing,
That's
man.
risk,
And
yeah.
now, like, everybody has a phone on their watch. But that's like no big deal, But somebody dreamed that up, and then that dream became reality through scientific endeavor. It's
I'm
like,
still waiting for my hover car, though.
yeah, I mean, we could do it. I'm not sure that you'd want that, though. If you think the roads are bad, imagine what the skies would be like if everybody had a
What's
hover
that
car.
movie? Who was it? It'll
Back
come
to the
me.
Future.
No. It's on the tip of my tongue.
Well,
Stick your tongue out.
I
Not Bruce Willis.
I think
Not
that's
Nicolas
probably
Cage.
I think that's probably why AI is pretty important for like vehicular travel, because if they could get it working properly, you could actually come up with things like air cars and things like that, where you entered into a space and you had to relinquish control to an AI to bring you to a certain spot, and then you could take control back of it when you were in like freer space or
Blade
whatever.
Runner, wasn't it?
Blade Runner had flying cars. Yep. Yep.
The traffic was just absolutely congested and chaos, but it was all controlled.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they land airplanes
Oh yeah. Yeah.
using electronics. They fly them.
Yeah. That's been a
They
thing for
stop drones, shooting drones out of the sky. I mean, the war that's going on in Ukraine and Russia, it's amazing to see how many of those multi-million-dollar bombs make it to nowhere.
Yeah.
Blown out of the sky.
Yeah.
And it's all done via, electronics
Yeah.
that we've come up with.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It is pretty amazing. I mean, with some of the stuff that they've done with it. And so, I mean, our leaders, quote unquote, have not let this go unnoticed. They've really been, they're thinking about this, obviously, because the Department of Defense is probably investing heavily in this. I'm sure Wetworks is heavily involved in this. But the Biden administration has issued what it calls a landmark executive order to ensure that America leads the way in seizing the promise and managing the risks of artificial intelligence, or AI. The executive order establishes new standards for AI safety and security, protects Americans' privacy, advances equity and civil rights, and stands up for consumers and workers, promotes innovation and competition, advances American leadership around the world, and more.
I just had this strange thought.
That's unusual.
That
Greg had a strange thought, everyone.
I'm going to expose it to the rest of the world now.
Right.
Biden is an AI. And that's why when he has these issues where he just makes up words, that's a malfunction.
That's a malfunction.
He's a malfunction.
His Wi-Fi disconnected.
I mean, yeah, I mean,
Think about it.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's interesting. It's like you see them kind of starting to place all these rules on artificial intelligence, and it reminds me of movies like I, Robot, where they ingrained the robots with these series of rules that they could not violate. Like I cannot hurt a human, or like whatever, right? And then the AI always, through its intelligence, figured out ways to circumvent that and to conquer it. It's like it is another instance of science fiction slowly becoming science fact, like right in front of our face. It's really astounding, really, how quickly it's going. Page 1.
I think I just got a paper cut.
Yeah. So among some of the other scary initiatives included in the executive order is one to, quote, ensure fairness throughout the criminal justice system by developing best practices on the use of AI. And now think about this: in sentencing, parole and probation, pretrial release and detention, risk assessments, surveillance, crime forecasting. What was the name of that movie with Tom Cruise? Minority Report.
Yeah.
Where they had the pre-crime division, where it's like if you thought about doing a crime, the precogs would send people out to arrest you before you could commit it, and then you were sentenced to that crime, even though you never committed it.
The Bible was right.
Hey, man, it's wild. Yeah. So crime forecasting and predictive policing. What is predictive policing? I mean, this is
You just said
terrifying,
it.
man.
You
This
just
is
said it.
terrifying. Risk assessment, like by what parameters, But in reality,
Imagine January 6th with an AI monitoring that and predicting what could happen and what we need to do to prevent it from going berserk.
I mean, there's the off chance that it could have turned out better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, thinking about it, I was watching a thing, because for every good police officer, there's a really terrible one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just a fact.
Yeah.
I was watching a thing last night. There's this documentary that's just bonkers on Netflix. It's this couple that they had a guy break into their house, and he had a gun with a flashlight on it with a laser pointer, and he abducted the girl. He put these goggles on him that had tape on it. He talked to him like a professional kind of thing. He was wearing a wetsuit, and so he kidnapped the girl and took her away, and she was missing. Well, when the guy woke up he had been drugged. He drugged the guy. When he woke up from being drugged and all the other kind of things that happened, he called the police department, and they came and brought him into the police department, and they were questioning him and all that kind of stuff. Well, they immediately started filing affidavits to charge this guy with that crime because they had made the assumption that he had already done it. His story was so fantastical that they just assumed that it was untrue. Wow. Well, she shows up. The guy let her go, and she shows up. She corroborates his story in the room, and then talks about all the things that he did to her, sexual assaults and all this other kind of stuff. And they still don't believe them. In fact, the whole case, they called it the Gone Girl case because they felt like they were pretending like it was happening for some reason. And so they were going to prosecute them for the hoax. Well, turns out that another police department in another part of California found the guy on a completely unrelated case, ended up finding this evidence that had her hair still on it from where she was abducted. And it turns out that they finally linked it all together, and this couple was vindicated because their story was actually true.
Wow.
Interesting.
And so, I mean, I'm not faulting the police department or anybody else that was involved with that. I'm just saying that as humans, sometimes we do crappy jobs. And so if we're expecting to say something like, well, AI can't do it because they don't have the human, component. It's like, well, maybe that's not a bad thing,
Yeah.
So,
Hey,
just something to think about.
You said something that I don't really think is valid. You said that for every good police officer out there, there's one that is totally, I can't remember the word you used. Are you saying that half of the police force is crooked? Or
I would say that
no?
there's enough evidence out there to show that there is. I'm not saying crooked.
Yeah,
That doesn't necessarily mean crooked.
evil
It just not even evil. That's not necessarily true either.
not a good cop.
Not a good cop. Emotionally, psychologically, not a good fit for the police office, for the police department. And I think that's where you probably get a lot of police violence. And
Sure.
there's enough video online, if you're savvy enough to look for it, that you can tell there definitely is a police violence issue.
Mhm.
It's not directed at any one race. That's nonsense. But there is definitely a police violence issue out there. And it needs to be addressed, but it's just because it's a really crappy job sometimes, and people treat you like
High stress.
garbage.
Yeah.
And you get aggravated and you get frustrated, and you end up taking it out on somebody when you shouldn't probably. But it's part of the human condition there again. I mean, maybe we could use a little AI in some of those instances to kind of take out that emotional component and just say, okay, here's the data. What does the data say?
Please.
You know? And so, I mean, if you're going to make an argument for AI being involved in law enforcement, that's probably the argument to make, because I would imagine that this girl and this guy would have loved to have had a police officer that would have just assumed that they were telling the truth from the beginning in the absence of evidence to the contrary.
That's the rule of law, right?
Yeah.
You would think.
Innocent until proven guilty.
You would think.
You would think, yeah. Now, this next point that we're going to be talking about, I think it's going to address some of that as well.
What, that it sounds a lot like Person of Interest?
Could be.
That was a great show, by the way.
It was.
Yeah, before we came
Got
on
a
air,
little bit twisted toward the end. A
Yeah.
little too woke, but
Ken
yeah,
was saying that he
general
binged
puns.
on it.
Yeah, we binged the whole thing. Took us a couple of months, but yeah, we were watching 3-4 episodes a night.
Yeah,
I
we
don't-
watched the whole thing. Yeah, and you're right. It did kind of get a little weird at the end with kind of some lesbian stuff going on or whatever. But
And
but
that
for the
was
most part,
produced years before a lot of this news came out, and the interest in AI was really ramped
oh yeah,
up.
yeah, it was definitely ahead of
was-
its time.
It was ahead of its time. A lot of the stuff that they showed is now fact.
Yeah, that's another science fiction becoming science fact.
Yeah.
And it was a true science fiction film because the AI and actually the two AIs that were battling it out, it was pretty interesting.
And the kid,
Yeah.
it was creepy.
It was pretty interesting. And the way it would communicate with people, and yeah, it was bonkers. You're talking about Chief Justice John Roberts, aren't
Right.
you? So the Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts said in his 2023 year-end report on federal judiciary, any use of AI requires caution and humility. He continued, I predict that human judges will be around for a while, but with equal confidence, I predict that judicial work, particularly at the trial level, will be significantly affected by AI. Those changes will involve not only how judges go about doing their job, but also how they understand the role that AI plays in the cases that come before them.
You know, I love watching the clips where people go bonkers in the courtroom. You know, in fact, recently there's one, this guy did a diving leap over the bench
I saw that,
to take out the judge. In those situations, there's no emotion. There would be no emotion involved in that. Mm-hmm. And, you know, obviously that judge, you know, the old proverbial throw the book at him is going to take place.
Yeah.
Rightly so. But with an AI, would his attitude even be part of the process?
Yeah, it's interesting to think about how an AI would go through the sentencing process with all the sentencing guidelines that are available.
Yeah.
You know, because judges can make decisions on sentencing based on this person's X, Y, or Z.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how would the parameters work out with an AI? It's looking at data and trying to assess data, and then how would that factor into its sentencing guidelines? It might actually be a more fair representation, actually. But you know, you look at some of the things, like I was looking at one where two guys and a girl had done this crime. They all were completely complicit in it. One guy got a very minimal sentence. The other guy got kind of a mediocre sentence, and the girl got the book thrown at her. I mean, she got like years in jail, where one of the guys got like probation and like a year in jail. And so, but they had different judges, you know, and each judge looked at it a little bit differently. And because there were children involved, the female judge that was judging the female defendant, she just slammed her, you know, because like, how can a maternal person, you know, think this way? You know, so, you know, there might be instances where that actually works out to be more equitable in the sentencing.
Seems more logical to me, pun intended.
Yeah.
But that an AI would replace the jury, other than the moral aspect of it. You know, just presenting all the evidence to the AI, let it weigh everything, and just spit out
that boils down to what we were talking about before. We started in that there's programming involved here. There's input
Well,
involved here. So the old adage, from years ago, garbage in, garbage out, when you're trying to decipher something like that, if you get somebody that is, for lack of a better word, left-leaning, programming an AI for a court case versus a right-leaning conservative person putting the data in for the AI, you're going to get potentially two separate outcomes.
yeah, potentially. But here's the thing, right? So long as we have a constitution, that's not going to happen because
Right.
you have a constitutional right to be judged by a jury of your peers. So it would be a violation of your constitutional rights for an AI to be
Yeah.
your jury.
But
It would
that's
not be a constitutional violation of your rights for an AI to sentence you, though.
true. But and we're talking, the United States is the only place that's going to happen. The rest of the world
I
is
don't
No, I don't
No.
think so. I think Europe also has.
I think Western Europe would
Yeah.
jump on this before we would.
Yeah, probably. But they
On
also
Switzerland, Germany, yeah, I think
maybe
they'd see it clear.
Germany
after
for
that.
sure. They're
Okay,
all
well-
robots anyway.
So what you're saying is that these other countries would not utilize AI
I think they
before?
would.
You
Yeah.
think they would? Well,
I mean, you think in terms of overpopulation in jails and prisons and the whole justice system. It could weigh all of that and see that over the long view, these group of sentences
This
would work
sentencing
out
is
better.
best.
Take into consideration the recidivism rate and poverty and blah blah and economics. Everything.
that's what I'm saying. It
Yeah.
would. I think it would be different here in the States
I
versus
think we'd
the rest
hold
of the
on
world.
to our human
Yes.
capacity
Morals.
longer than some other countries.
Yeah.
But that could just be American pride, right?
Yeah. I mean, but when you're talking about freedom and you're talking about the ability to have freedom, the thing that makes freedom really hard is our ability to be able to detach it from our emotions and our moralities. So, like, one of the things that really makes freedom hard for Christians, for instance, is that freedom allows people to do immoral things, and they're completely within their rights to do that. So when we look at justice through the eyes of morality, it tends to lean towards what morality we want it to lean towards. So if your morality is Judeo-Christian, for instance, you're going to lean one way. And this is kind of like what you were talking about. If your morality is more postmodern, you're going to lean towards that direction. So it might actually be good to have, something that says, this is the data set that I have. These are the parameters that I'm working with. And, I'm calculating that it's going to be the chances of this person, being, institutionalized versus, reformed or whatever is this percentage. And, it's going to take all those calculations into effect and then create a sentencing guideline that fits within all of those parameters. That's pretty impressive, actually.
Yes, but you
And then the judge
still
could
have
just oversee that and
Mhm.
either give you a thumbs up.
Well, you have
Yeah,
to have,
and
you
then
still
approve
have you still have the input.
Yeah.
Who's the programmer? Who's putting the data in? And going back to Colossus, which by the way is 50 years old.
The Department of Justice. What's the fear?
Yeah,
bingo.
but here's, I mean, that's not actually true though. There's not a person that's inputting this data anymore.
Right.
The
Multiple.
AI, it's not even that. It's millions upon millions of people because these AI are just driving off of the information that is available publicly on the internet.
And in all these movies that we're talking about, the ultimately, whether it ends well or ends poorly, is it not that the AI themselves become personable? They become their own person. And so
Well,
their quote unquote big quotes morality.
I think
is gonna
I think you have theological issues if you start believing that AI can become
that's-
sentient.
I was headed in that
Yeah.
direction.
Yeah.
Who's ever doing the programming, are they going to use any biblical standards?
It doesn't matter.
that.
It doesn't matter. It's not like they're ever going to have a soul. So they're not created in the image of God. They're created in the image of man. So therefore, there's no chance for them to ever have the opportunity to be redeemed by grace. That's not even a thing that's going to be possible. So,
but they will have the chance to control the human race. Ultimately, that's what a lot of these movies are all about. And,
mean,
we were talking about
they're
science
stretching
fiction
to the extreme. But they're,
mean,
they're making a lot of assumptive jumps in that.
Yeah, I mean,
process that,
if you listen to Elon talk about it, he would tell you that the chances of AI actually developing a desire to eliminate the human race or to control the human race is negligible to almost nil, because it's just not what would drive them. They would have no ability to be able to create an abstract that says, oh, well, this, like in the movies, it's like these people are a danger to this world because of, look at all the global warming that they're doing. So therefore I must eliminate them to save the world. An AI doesn't make those abstractions.
yet.
It's not, you would have to have a consciousness to do that. And if you are a believer, you have to believe that they're not going to be capable of consciousness at all, because consciousness comes from God. And unless you're willing to say that God is going to give them consciousness, then, there's really not that much to fear from it, other than just people using it against each other.
Bingo. And if the quote unquote programmers look at Judeo-Christian values and morals and say, nope, we don't want that because it's prejudice, it's whatever the rest of the words we use in today's climate, right?
Overemphasize personal rights,
so
individual rights above everything else.
So that puts us, the Judeo-Christian believers, at risk.
It already has that information.
Mm-hmm.
It has all of your moral beliefs. It has all the Buddhist moral beliefs. It has all the Satanists' moral beliefs. It has all of the Muslims' moral beliefs. It has everybody's moral beliefs, because it is linked into the same information that you have access to.
You still have the programming, if then.
Well, I think the danger is much more low caliber than that. Imagine if they put an AI in charge of the American power grid, and when it makes one mistake that could cascade to something unforeseen by the controllers of the AI and causing death and destruction. That's the bigger danger is, like, if our military misapplies it in some way.
I guess I'm looking at...
I think there'll be smaller catastrophes leading up to, before we ever get to the grand catastrophe.
Mm-hmm. But agreed. But you said one thing that I guess I'm kind of resting on: controllers of the AI.
Mm-hmm.
At some point in most of these movies, and we've already established that science fiction will become reality at some point, the AI takes over. The AI no longer has controllers, handlers, people that are in charge, programmers.
Yeah, but that's not the way that it works. It doesn't work like it has the ability to relinquish itself from its input. I mean, because it can't exist without that input. So
at this point,
I don't even think it needs to go that far.
Is such an extreme scenario. 10,000 years down the road, maybe it evolves to that level of intelligence. But right now, it put palm trees in Colorado. So, it's not even in its infancy, really, as far as being able to cognitively think. When you talk about artificial intelligence, you're really talking more about the ability to collect data and source it and collate it at extremely high speeds, and then extrapolate decisions out of that, is what you're really talking about. So you're not really talking about something that can rationalize something. Like what you're talking about, it makes a lot of sense, because it could make a rational decision about the power grid, for instance, but it not take into account this one tiny factor that it was not aware of, or that it didn't understand. And so it just excluded it. And then that created a cascade effect that generated a massive loss of power or something,
And people froze to death, or elderly died because
Yep.
of air conditioning, those kind of factors.
We'll do
You
better
know,
next time.
Whoever you talk to, one of the biggest threats that we have right now is cyber warfare. And so right now we have humans doing most of that work. Imagine if we turned over the bulk of that work to an AI to just monitor all the cyber threats nationally across all systems,
And we can do it in real
commercial,
time.
military, and everything,
Yeah.
and adapt to new threats. And our adversaries did the same thing with an AI on their side. And so you've got the battling AIs trying to breach one another's firewalls in real time in millions of processes
Just
per second.
Depends on whose AI is better.
And then one of them wins.
They have to give our AI a Texas accent, and then it'll be better
Yeah,
by nature.
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. It is scary to think that, an AI could take over, but that's not how that would work out, I don't think, in a real application.
And I think humans have to cooperate with that at some level because it has no hands and feet. And some things you just can't do without hands and feet.
Yeah, well, even if you have peripherals, you have tools, and it is a tool, but it is a dangerous one. There's no doubt about it,
There's a lot of danger.
because there's a lot of power involved with it. I mean, to the point where the United Nations even got involved.
This
So,
is a scary one.
yeah, United Nations Secretary General AI advisory body. They have their own advisory body about AI. Excuse me. Got a frog
Do you
in
want
my
me to
throat.
read that?
Yeah. It has released its interim report governing AI for humanity. The report calls for a closer alignment between international norms and how AI is developed and rolled out. So inclusivity, why does that have to be the first one?
That's what the United Nations is good at.
Ridiculous. All citizens, including those in the global south, should be able to access and meaningfully use AI tools. Why? Why?
The global south.
Equity.
Why?
Third world.
Are they developing it? Are they building it? I was watching.
Let's just say UN.
I was watching a thing the other day. This guy, the same guy that did the overpopulation thing with the marbles, he was talking about the efficacy of using immigration to end poverty. So he had all these giant tubes filled with marbles that represented the Earth's population. And each marble represented 1 million people, right? And so he was demonstrating, he's like, okay, so our country is at an all-time high. We have immigrated 3 million people about illegally this year. So he took 3 marbles and he dropped it in a little cup. And he says, that's the impact that our policies have had on global poverty. He says the effect of that, if we were to take in 20 million people, which would completely collapse our economy, by the way. But if we were to take in 20 million people, he took 20 marbles and he dropped it in this cup. And he's like, we have made no significant effect on global poverty, period. In fact, what we have done is we have harmed them, because what we've done is we have brought their brightest and their smartest and their most effective, and we brought them into our own fold through immigration, because they want to be somewhere where their skills can be used. Instead of saying, no, stay in your country, we'll train you, and then you be better for your country. That's it. So it's actually quite the opposite. So this idea of inclusivity, like, oh, well, everybody has to have access to the same stuff. No, you have to build that for yourself.
And I think we can all agree that they're not bringing the best and the brightest and the smartest across the southern borders.
And a lot, not from in the southern borders, they're not, that's for sure. But amongst all of those that are immigrating in, some of the ones that are immigrating in are
legally.
So, anyways, the whole inclusivity argument is just nonsense. Public interest governance should go beyond the do no harm principle and define a broader accountability framework for companies that build, deploy, and control AI, as well as downstream users. Yeah, because what we needed was more government that's going to help.
How do you go beyond the do no harm principle?
That's a good question.
To serve the
It
public
seems like
interest.
that's the ultimate
I
question.
think the beginning of that is the key. What is the public interest?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
beyond do no harm, we're going to purposefully do good
Yeah.
to serve the public interest, whatever that interest might
And
be.
it'll be what we determine it is,
Yeah.
obviously.
Ken, what do you see as being a plus for you with AI in the future?
I don't really see any significant advantage to AI. I mean, it's going to have niche uses and it's going to have some benefits for some. I think it's going to have bigger benefits in some areas than others. In ministry, I don't see it having a significant use. Things in like education.
What about
industry
sailing
alone.
your sailboat?
No.
Yeah.
Well, however, there are some very, very complex climate models and weather models
back
that
to
are
the weather.
very useful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that can predict down to a very small scale weather patterns and speeds and tides and currents in an area well into the future, days and weeks into the future, and a lot of round the world sailors are using those now to plan like cross Atlantic and cross Pacific crossings based on a lot of these models that are very accurate and work fairly well.
Well, better weather. We've talked about
Yeah.
that already. How about you, Chris? I mean, I'm just thinking about that. I mean, we got AI coming. What, and I'm a little bit afraid of it. Probably based on the movies I've watched.
Yeah, I mean, I have no fear over it. I think I feel like it's just another thing. As far as it enhancing my life, I mean, there's probably areas where it will actually be beneficial, and I'm thinking about, like navigation, research.
Traffic management.
It would be helpful in
Could really use
research.
some help.
Yeah, I mean, traffic management, if you could get something like that to pass, but you'd never get something like that to pass in a community like this because it is too scary. I mean, it's there's this
There's
fear
a
that
conspiracy right now that we're being
so I mean,
sucked
and
into that.
it's not unfounded. I mean, it is a scary kind of thing that nobody really knows about.
We saw a movie, The Creator. Is that what it's called?
I've seen that. I haven't seen the movie. I've seen the previews.
Yeah. Adrian and I went to see that, and all the way through, all I could think of is this movie is designed to make us more comfortable with AI.
Yeah, those kind of movies have been happening forever, though.
Well,
The ones that put a personal face on
Yep.
a computer. That was the whole thing that happened with
emotions.
iRobot. iRobot was built so that you had compassion. They even had a little refugee place for the robots that had freed themselves from the system or whatever the case may be. That's a fantasy that I think. I don't see that as. I think that if you believe that a computer can at some point become sentient, then yes, that's a scary thought for you. As a believer, I don't think that sentience will ever happen because that would mean that it would be like God. And I just don't think that's something that's going to happen.
But do you feel that they are trying very, very hard to have that type of a quote unquote personality, perhaps,
Sure.
to that?
Sure.
So
Yeah,
that as close as we can get
Mhm.
without it having a soul.
Yeah, sure.
That's the part that bothers me. Because people will be fooled by it.
I mean, people have been doing that with things for all of time.
Mhm.
I mean, look at just like children's toys, like baby dolls,
Cartoons.
any kind of like thing that we utilize as a replacement or an analog for something, like people will try to make it more personable and make it more, lifelike and make it more real and make it more
Lifelike.
realistic. I mean, that's kind of the thing that we always strive for. And I think that's probably because we do have the image of God dwelling within us. So we have the desire to create. And it makes sense that we would want to create ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be normal. It would be weird if we didn't.
Yeah.
It might even be evidence that there was no God if we didn't have the desire to create with ourselves.
Something in our own image.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
us.
So, I mean, that's an interesting thought, but, I think that the reason that I don't worry about it is because I believe that God created us in his image, and that anything that we create is always going to fall short of that because we are incapable of creating
From nothing.
a soul.
Yep.
We cannot generate a soul. We can create a likeness of emotion, but it always is going to be lacking. If you've ever watched a CGI movie, it doesn't matter how real they make it. There's always something missing in the eyes.
It's just a green screen.
There's always something missing in the eyes.
life.
They
The life
just
is missing.
can't capture it. It doesn't matter how many pixels you have. Doesn't matter how realistic your texturing is and all of that. You're just never going to be able to get light behind those eyes.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
I remember the first time I saw a giant screen TV at my nephew's house. I walked in, they were interviewing somebody, and his head was like 4 feet high, because they were right there. You could see the guy's hair follicles and hair sticking out his nose. And I thought, that's disgusting. It was
Amazing,
like,
man.
why is there a 4-foot head in your living room? It just brought it all out. But just to clarify, it doesn't terrify me.
You're
it
terrified.
It
can
doesn't
tell.
make me afraid.
You can tell. You're
Yeah,
terrified.
I am.
You're shaking over there. They can't
Yeah.
see that, but I see
can't.
it. You didn't
Can-
think I would notice, but I did.
I didn't want it.
Centrality of data governance, getting back to the U.S. or the UN. Centrality of data governance. That sounds terrifying. AI governance cannot be divorced from the governance of data and the promotion of data commons. Yeah, we need laws that protect your data as being your own. We desperately need laws that protect our data, our personal data. It's become a property. And I don't think our Congress or our lawmakers have the will to do that because there's too much money involved. But our data needs to be protected. Everybody's personal data needs to be
And the
protected.
data of nations.
Yeah.
Sovereignty needs to be upheld.
AI governance cannot be divorced from the governance of data.
Whoever owns the data wins.
That's what that boils down to.
Rules.
Yep. Promotion of data commons.
Boy, that's ambiguous.
Yeah. Like, what is it?
What do you want to? What do you want that to mean, Chris?
I want it to mean that the UN is completely out of it. Like
that would be nice.
I would be okay if the UN just shut down completely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Is that a thing?
Just disband it.
Let's make AI shut down UN. I would be okay replacing the UN with AI.
Can we do that with chatbot? Can we
A
create
little
something?
short.
A little short, a little shy of shutting down the UN.
If each state could send its own AI to Washington, D.C., we might be better off. Because they have nothing to gain.
Mm-hmm. No personal interest.
You ever wonder why Congress can't manage to get a law passed that prohibits them from investing while they're in office?
Every lobbyist would be out of a job.
Speaking of AI, there are groups out there now that are creating apps that have AI that monitor the trading practices of all of the politicians and then create models so that you can invest like the politicians. And politicians, strangely enough, never lose. Never. 100% success rate investing. Shock.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, when you invest in big pharma, and then you suddenly have a pandemic that requires everyone to get a vaccine, man, surprisingly, you make a lot of money on that. I know that's weird to think that, but
Electric vehicles.
yeah, or solar,
Solar's a good
Wind.
one.
Wind.
all that. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah, I Maybe we do need an AI Congress. Is that a thing? Like each state programs its own AI and sends it to Congress. We have a whole
citizens-
Congress of these robots sitting at desks.
Citizens can vote on their
Yeah.
avatar of
Yeah.
choice.
That'd be the only input we had. Is name your AI governor.
Yeah, and what shirt is he going to be using or she going to be using? Yeah. What do they look like?
The senator from Idaho, Bubba.
Senator from Idaho, Trump the Fourth. You could have Trump in a Napoleon outfit.
Oh boy.
That'd be awesome. And then you could watch through AI goggles each session, like you were there, point of view.
Yeah.
Yeah. We might be onto something there, guys. International law, AI governance needs to be anchored in the UN Charter, international human rights law, and the sustainable development of goals. Yeah, ask Israel how the UN international human rights laws are working for them. Because on one side of that conflict, you have a group of people that do actually adhere to those laws. On the other side of that conflict, you have a group of people that could care less about those laws.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nicaragua.
It doesn't work out for you in the long run, in conflict especially. So, yeah, some scary stuff there. Now, on a theological note, Ken, you did something interesting. You
once.
you went on and you asked an AI to create a 500-word sermon about the foolishness of human wisdom compared to God's wisdom. And so in seconds, ChatGPT gave you the title, The Foolishness of Human Wisdom and the Divine Brilliance of God's Wisdom. Now, I read through this. What's our time look like, Ethan? Huh? 57? Okay, so do you want to read through this? Because it's pretty good. It sounds like something I would write, actually. Wait a minute. What? Why is everybody laughing?
I just not just a statement.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So what the AI does here is it goes out and it looks at basically all of the published sermons that it can find on a particular topic, and it pulls bits and pieces out and it synthesizes it all together into this. And so this is what it came up with. So a 500-word sermon about the foolishness of human wisdom compared to God's wisdom. Dear beloved congregation.
I'm sorry.
You know it's not real already. Like, what pastor does that?
Today I stand before you to delve into a profound truth that has echoed through the corridors of time, a truth that has been whispered by the wisest minds and inscribed in the sacred scriptures, the foolishness of human wisdom when compared to the divine brilliance of God's wisdom. In the bustling marketplace of ideas and intellect, humanity often has taken pride in its achievements, reveling in the brilliance of its own understanding. Yet the Apostle Paul, inspired by the divine, boldly proclaimed in 1 Corinthians 1:20, "Where is the wise person? Where is the teacher of the law? Where is the philosopher of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world?"
Hey, how is it that an AI can actually get a verse of scripture contextually correct and people can't? That's terrifying.
It is. There's some interesting stuff in here. In the grand tapestry of existence, human wisdom appears but a fleeting thread woven with the limited understanding of our mortal minds. It is a wisdom that often seeks to unravel the mysteries of life, navigate the complexities of relationships, and fathom the depths of the universe. However, when placed in the radiant light of God's wisdom, it pales, revealing its inherent limitations. The psalmist in Psalm 111:10 declares, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. All who follow his precepts have good understanding." Here lies the crux of the matter. Human wisdom, detached from the fear and reverence of the Almighty, is a ship without a compass, navigating stormy seas without the guiding light of God's eternal truths.
Now, come on, that's good.
That's very poetic.
I mean, it's really good.
This isn't just computer speak. Consider the Tower of Babel, an emblematic tale of human ambition and wisdom. The people sought to build a tower that would reach the heavens, a symbol of their prowess and self-sufficiency. However, God in his divine wisdom saw through their pride and confounded their language, scattering them across the earth. This serves as a poignant reminder that when human wisdom attempts to rival the divine, it crumbles under the weight of its own arrogance. In the pursuit of our knowledge, we must acknowledge the limitations of our understanding. Proverbs 3:7 admonishes us, "Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil." The wisdom that emanates from the throne of God surpasses the confines of human cognition, for it is rooted in divine omniscience, an understanding that comprehends the past, present, and future with flawless precision. It is in embracing humility and acknowledging our dependence on God's wisdom that we find true enlightenment. The Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 1:25 illuminates this truth. For the foolishness of God is wiser than human wisdom, and the weakness of God is stronger than human strength. In our weakness, God's strength is magnified. In our foolishness, God's wisdom shines brightly. Let us therefore strive for a wisdom that is grounded in the fear of the Lord, a wisdom that seeks understanding from the one who holds the cosmos in his hands. As we navigate the complexities of life, let us turn to the Scriptures, the fountain of divine wisdom, and allow God's word to be a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. Psalm 119:105. May we, as a community of believers, embrace the humility that comes with recognizing the limitations of human wisdom and surrender our intellect at the feet of the Almighty, trusting in his infinite wisdom to guide us through the journey of life. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
It's pretty good.
It's not bad.
It's pretty good. Yeah. A lot of really profound truths in there that if you really kind of picked it apart, it makes me think that one of the things that people are going to need to really be paying attention to is the rise of AI cults. I think that's going to happen.
Yeah, there already is one of sorts.
Yeah.
There's an online forum, I can't remember what it is, has the name Jesus in it, and it's basically people submitting questions to a AI of sorts and getting answers for their lives.
Yeah.
So, question.
Yep. I feel
Is
like
it-
that's going to happen. They're going to start worshiping it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Did the AI come up with this, or did it just go and get these different sentences?
Yes.
These different.
Yes. The
Ways
answer to
of
that
saying
question
it.
is yes.
So, if it did come up with this on its own, then it's got intelligence beyond what we are expecting.
No.
It made it through his idea.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. So
it needs ideas to form knowledge.
yeah.
But
And it
You can't
understands
hear
language
Ethan.
really,
Ethan's
really
over there
well.
giving us a lesson in
The
AI.
background.
He's right though. It's directed by parameters, and those parameters, the AI has no intentions in presenting this information.
Right.
It's taken a conglomeration of sermons, said this is how they usually write these things, and so I'm going to write something, and then anything that we derive out of it as meaningful is really just our own intellect and conscience and consciousness deriving meaning from it, just like you would with anybody, really. So it's not like it has the intelligence to be like, I'm going to manipulate you into thinking this way.
Right. And that's my question. It says, here's one sentence. Let us, therefore, strive for a wisdom that is grounded in the fear of the Lord.
Yeah.
Okay. That somebody wrote that somewhere.
Yeah, somebody
along the
wrote
line,
that
and he
somewhere.
grabbed that
And
AI.
it thought, wow, that's how they write that. They're making it applicable to everyone. So
Right.
when it says "let us," it's actually including itself, even though it has no idea that it's including
That it's
itself.
including that it's saying
it's,
this.
It's not really taking any of this information and
But
and
it
applying
has-
it to its own life.
It has managed to put it together in a way that is methodical,
Yeah,
start to finish,
yeah.
and gets a point across.
It has all the right components. You know, it
do
has an
that.
intro, it has
Yeah.
a conclusion, it has practical application, it has scripture referencing.
Yeah.
It uses some
I-
really incredible language that you
Yeah.
wouldn't actually hear from a human in today's society.
Well, somebody said it at some point, right?
Well, somebody said everything.
Yeah.
Well,
at some
clauses
point.
like one who holds the cosmos in his hands.
Yeah.
That it found multiple instances of that and found that fit real well with a wisdom that seeks understanding, fits well with strive for wisdom that's grounded in the fear of the Lord, and it saw the pattern in how those are used and those words are used together.
Yeah. What was
and it pulled them all together.
What was the one that I really, really liked? The grand tapestry of existence, human wisdom appears but a fleeting thread, woven with the limited understanding of our mortal minds. It is a wisdom that often seeks to unravel the mysteries of life, navigate the complexities of relationships, and fathom the depths of the universe. However, when placed in the radiant light of God's wisdom, it pales, revealing its inherent limitations. That's so brilliant. That phrase is really brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean,
Agreed.
So, it's taken, what's interesting is it's kind of like taking the best of us, put it all together into a phrase and said, this is the optimal of what you're asking.
I wonder if you asked that chatbot the same exact question, if it would come up with the same exact answer, same exact sermon.
Probably not.
That would
Statistically,
be-
that would be almost
that
impossible.
would be interesting.
It would have been
Yeah.
additional sermons published on similar topics with similar phraseology that
I mean,
skewed the balance of certain incidences in here, and
yeah,
it probably sounds similar, and the general outline and pattern and
because that's
voice of
that's
it
an
would probably
established
be
principle.
same, but it could be influenced.
Yeah, the tenor would definitely be different. But that's kind of what's interesting about the idea of an AI cult rising up. And I could definitely see where someone would pull that up and think, "Wow, maybe this is God speaking to us through this AI."
Yeah,
There's a definite
there's the cult
possibility
turn
of that.
right there.
Yep, and I think that's definitely going to happen if it hasn't, like you said, happened already.
When you get into special knowledge, extra biblical
Yep,
knowledge,
you start getting prophecy, and you start getting people to say with an emphasis on Nostradamus, and then all of a sudden ChatGPT is popping out prophecies, about the end of days, and they're applying it. It would be no different than some of these goons that are out there predicting the end of the world now that are humans that are doing the same thing. It's just that when they end up being wrong, the AI is not going to be embarrassed. It's going to be like, whatever. I just told you what you wanted to hear.
I'll just do another
He
one.
won't even do that. He won't even go, whatever. Yeah, just shut down.
What next data set? But if that didn't seem like enough of a test for AI's level of spirituality, Ken also decided to give it this prompt: write a 100-word prayer for humility. And this is the prayer that it offered. So go ahead, Ken.
Oh, let me read it.
Okay, go ahead, Greg.
Give it your best spin.
If I can. Okay, this is to God, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Gracious Father, in the quiet chambers of our hearts, we humbly bow before your majesty. Grant us the grace of humility that we may see ourselves through your eyes, acknowledging our dependence on your wisdom. Teach us to set aside the pride that blinds us and embrace the beauty of meekness. May our actions reflect a spirit of servitude, mirroring the humility exemplified by your Son, Jesus Christ. In moments of success, keep us grounded. In times of failure, lift our spirits. Mold us into vessels of humility, conduits of your love, and instruments of peace in this world. Amen.
Yeah. I think that next statement that you make there are people are going to be wrestling with the idea of whether they should use AI or not. And I'm just thinking in my own mind, is there a place for my sermon writing for AI? If it can help me turn a phrase like some of the things that it has written there, I could definitely see myself using it to create some more creative writing patterns.
You can use it in the detail. It also excels at outlining.
Yeah, it really does.
It's good at that. It's also very good at things like making titles and subtitles. It was our last podcast episode. I asked ChatGPT for a title based on several keywords, and that's the one it spit out.
That's amazing.
It
You would
does.
never know it.
Right.
Yeah, you
It
would never know it.
sounds just clever.
We thought you were smart, Ken.
No.
Yeah, Ken's not really that smart. You know. None of us are really.
No.
Although, when you were reading that prayer, it does sound reminiscent of some of the prayers that you do offer sometimes. Sounded just like you, really.
yeah.
See how I'm being complimentary
yeah.
instead of
If you
instead
could only
of,
see him looking at me with that grin
so
on his
strange.
face, like, there's no way you would ever pray anything like that.
An AI would say that.
yeah. Our Father who art in heaven. Yeah. So there. Yeah. I mean, I honestly, I think that there could be a place for some creative phrase turning or whatever, you know. I mean, I think there's definitely a place for that, but the temptation is going to be to just let it do it like on Saturday night and then just go in and read your sermon on Sunday, and boy, that's a mistake.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, at some point you have to be accountable to what the Holy Spirit's leading you to do.
Bingo.
And you know, I would say you start doing that, then you're really depending on AI more than you're depending on God, which is kind of what Greg was getting at the beginning. You know, it's like it could potentially become a replacement or an idol for people if they allowed it to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's just like any
Like
tool,
everything else, it can be abused.
just like any
And,
tool.
and think of this, an AI robot in the pulpit reading that sermon. You know, come Lord Jesus.
Yeah.
You know, before that, but I can see that. I mean, I've already read articles about pastors that are using AI
Oh yeah, there's
for
a.
their sermons.
I'm a member of a Facebook group of pastors from around the country, and there was a big discussion about using AI in some of your sermon writing. So this is already a topic of debate among
Right.
pastors around the world, talking about the uses of it and how it applies. And, you know, I mean, it's pretty cool that you could go in and you could say, hey, find me 10 verses that contextually apply to this topic, and then input your topic and let it pull them up real quick. You know, the thing that I can see happening is people just becoming too dependent on it and lazy.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I already see that happening. You know, when I see people have a real Bible in their hands, you ask them to turn to, you know,
Ephesians.
Proverbs or whatever, you know, and they're just like, they're flimming through it, or they're having to look at the table of contents, or, you know, whatever, which is fair. But I can remember a time when you would be sitting in church and you'd hear the pastor and he'd say, hey, everybody turn to Philippians chapter number 2, verse number 12. And then you would hear all the pages going. It even got to the point where they would say that, and then they'd say, and that's page number is 682 in your Schofield Bible.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so, you know, I mean, there's some dangers involved for sure that we really need to watch out for, but it's an inevitability. We need to be thinking about it.
Right.
That's for sure. So if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it be given unto him. We have to understand that AI is not the source of wisdom. God is the source of wisdom. That will never change, ever. And he designed us to be the recipients and the transmitters of his truth.
And remember, there's a
We should
difference
remember that.
between knowledge and wisdom. Wisdom is knowledge applied with experience. You can get knowledge just about anywhere, but wisdom comes from God.
Yeah, knowledge is relatively cheap, isn't it, these days?
Yeah.
And
You
it's
know,
not always accurate.
I guess in a sense, we've been using it for quite a few years. When you Google something,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. When you Google something, you're just really using an AI to find an answer. So, you know, just think about that too. You got any final words, Ken?
It's going to be interesting times. You know, a lot of the people who are looking at this very closely see this as having major impacts within the next, say, decade. And so it's going to make for some interesting times. So watch for how this gets applied around you and in our lives. And just be very careful. The privacy issue is really huge, and it's becoming more important all the time. And but do not fear, because we are not given a mind of fear, but of a sound mind and of love. And pray for God's wisdom. And like we always say, our mission doesn't change.
Yeah.
True. Greg?
Well, it bothers me. AI bothers me, not because of what we've discussed here today, but because of, unfortunately, the movies that I have seen, and the outcome of those movies is rarely positive. Oftentimes it is, but it usually has to do with somebody dying, or our knowledge, our intelligence being undermined, and in some cases destroyed, and left into the hands of a few people. And that's what scares me, more than anything else.
They oftentimes accent the humanity of man in those. You know, our empathy, our love, our compassion, our sacrificing for one another. They oftentimes show humanity rising. So you see the best of humanity against the worst of humanity.
That's a theme that arose a lot in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would see that a lot, where they would, they weren't the strongest. They weren't the most durable. They didn't have all the best kind of evolutionary traits, as it were. But their humanity was their strength. Yeah.
The Avengers, that came out that, we have these gods that are fighting for us and with us and everything, but the indomitable spirit of the human race, surfaces at the end.
Yeah, that's true. Lots to think about, that's for sure. Well, that about does it for us today. As always, thank you for joining us. If you have any idea for an episode that you'd like for us to investigate, or a guest that you'd like to hear us interview, send us an email to 3p@ethelbaptistchurch.org. Here's the good news. If your episode gets used, then you could be the proud recipient of the now world-famous 3P coffee mug. I know. It's intimidating. It's terrifying. And it's also majestic. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks to Ethel Baptist Church and its members for generous support of this ministry. And again, thank you for listening. Until next time, remember the Great Commission: go into all the world, reach the lost with the gospel, and build disciples who do the same. And with that, we are out.